All right, cool. We're live. What's up, guys? It's been a while since I've done this, but there have been a recent series of events that have occurred in the world that I kind of want to talk about. This is something that really holds dear to my heart. Um, Mainly just knowing my government is enabling this, and my tax dollars are going to enable this. And everybody, I saw a video on YouTube titled uh, "The Israel at War: The Crisis That Nobody Saw Coming." The crisis shocked the world. Well, if you had been tension, you would have known that this crisis was coming. You would have known that the chickens were eventually going to come home to roost, because when you oppress a group of people, in fact, let's just go ahead and go over that now. Let's go over some quick facts in regards to this whole war, because let's be real, this is war. This is a war. So let's go over some quick facts about this conflict, all right? Um, Israel is a genocidal, white supremacist settler colonial project in the same vein as Nazi Germany and the United States. The reason why the United States is an ally to Israel and the West are allies to Israel is because they've deliberately propped it up as a stronghold into the Middle East so that they can fulfill and carry out their geopolitical interests of dominion, conquest, and exploitation within the region. Since Israel's conception, it has been on a genocidal conquest. At this time, there are approximately 6 million Palestinian refugees living in the neighboring regions of Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. 6 million Palestinian refugees. These are 6 million people that have been displaced from their homes over the past several decades. Another fact: Zionism is a fascist ideology, and it is actually inherently anti Semitic. A lot of people want to conflate Zionism with Judaism, and they want to bait you into calling you an anti Semite for criticizing Israel or criticizing Zionism, when the fact of the matter is that Judaism and Zionism are not the same thing. All right. The Palestinians are Semitic people. Many of the Arabic tribes that live within the region are Semitic. All right. And Israel is driving them out. They're driving them out. They're killing them. They're abusing them. And it's an ideology that around basically their model of Jews, the white Western European Jews. They're the only ones that are the real Jews. Those are the real Israelis, because the overwhelming majority of the people that have migrated to this region are white Western Europeans, wealthy white Western Europeans at that. And so, I mean, all you got to do is look at the way that they've treated Ethiopian Jews, the African Jews, because there are African Jewish populations that have migrated to Israel, and they're given the shit land. They're treated with shit pay. They're segregated. They were actually forcibly sterilized for some time, around a decade. So they're treated like second-class citizens in a similar manner that African Americans are treated as second-class citizens here in the United States. Israel really is the younger brother of America, if you think about it. Some other facts: Gaza is a concentration camp. That's not a civilization. That's not a country. It is a concentration camp. Largest concentration camp. It, as many other commenters have said, it's an open air prison. The Israelis have complete and total dominion over it. They have a massive wall with sniper towers and artillery and all that. They decide who goes in, they decide who comes out. They monitor the region. They routinely send troops in to skirmish and terrorize and bomb the place. They control the trade. They control access to food, water, and the power supply. They basically own Gaza. They control Gaza. It's a concentration camp of sorts. And that's something that people don't realize, that the world's largest concentration camp is active in Israel. And Israel is a fascist apartheid state. Another thing that I want to bring up: the Palestinians are completely within their right under international law to defend themselves and their lands, and to violently repel the settler colonial occupiers with militant lethal force. They are completely within their legal right to do that. And the ones who are in violation are actually the Israelis, for occupying and living on stolen land that wasn't theirs in the first place. The fucking And that's another thing people aren't really talking about. People are talking about the civilian casualties that occurred, like how the Hamas have killed civilians. My thing is like, yeah, their attacks are discoordinated and they lack discipline. They're sort of like ragtag assaults from rebels, but like, how can you really expect Hamas, like the Palestinian rebels, to be perfect and only to attack militant targets, especially when you consider the fact that like all the Israeli civilians that live in the region literally fucking moved there from places elsewhere. They're uh they're literally complicit. I don't care what anyone says. The Israelis that live around Gaza and are settling in Gaza and, intruding more and more around Gaza are complicit in genocide. Like, you're literally moving in and stealing land from other people. Like, how does that make you innocent? And like, oh, but their kids are you're putting your own kids in jeopardy by fucking bringing them to a war zone. That's what nobody's talking about there. So I just wanted to go over these things. Oh yeah, and another thing, this is a point that I brought up in a community post, but the first thing to die in war is the truth. There was a claim that was being circulated around the mainstream media that the Hamas, the rebels, were slicing the throats of infants and killing children. And the source for this claim came from an individual IDF soldier. And the IDF, the people, were not able to independently verify this claim. This is not an independent man. And now you have Netanyahu parroting this claim. You have Joe Biden saying that he personally witnessed firsthand the deaths of all these infant children and so on. Even though this thing hasn't been independently verified, and to my knowledge, it's actually fucking the U.S. State Department has even said that no, he actually hasn't seen that. So it turns out it's just a lie. It's just a lie in order to justify Israel's very heavy-handed retaliation, which we will go over here in a moment. It's incredibly fucked up. So I've got some articles that I'd like to review with you guys. So yeah, this all started on October 6th. On October 6th, the Palestinian National Resistance Group Hamas carried out a massive offensive on Israeli territory, or it's really Palestinian territory. They're trying to take their land back, and they're retaliating against the settlers in the territory surrounding the Gaza Strip. Thousands of missiles were launched into the air. They flew over the Israeli blockade wall, and they bombed and destroyed a bunch of infrastructure within the neighboring region, killing thousands of Israeli troops and civilians alike. During the attack, Hamas took dozens of hostages, and I believe the original estimated death tolls around 1,200 Israelis. Well, again, in direct retaliation, the IDF carried out mass terror bombings across the Gaza Strip, killing way more fucking Palestinians and actually murdering children. And to my knowledge, the death toll so far is in the ballpark of around 5,000, but I anticipate that figure is going to rise exponentially over the next several months. So I'm going to go ahead and share my first video with you guys. Oops. Boom. You hear that? Half of the civilian population in Gaza are children. So just keep that in mind when all these attacks are carried out. Roughly half of the people that live in Gaza are children. And I'm pretty sure, according to another statistic, they basically all of them have post-traumatic stress disorder. All right, yeah. So that's what's going on. And look at some of these comments. She says Gaza will recover in 5 years. Let's see what we got. Because I saw some fucking comments that were actually still pro-Zionist, go figure, saying, "Oh, this is all Hamas's fault. Blame goes on Hamas. You can never convince me they didn't. You can't tell me that these people didn't see the military equipment being brought in. Harboring terrorists can be dangerous." See, victim blaming right here. I like how he said he never fired a rocket. Like, what have I done? Yeah, so really they're asking why when they were dancing around on the streets? What? When you decide to patronize snakes to bite your neighbors, don't expect there to be no see, victim blaming. You see victim blaming in the comments section, and that just goes to show how utterly fucked people's perceptions are on this whole situation, and the power of the media, the power of the fucking distortion that's going on right now. I got another video. Oh, I'm muted? Oh, shit. Hold on a second. Can you guys hear me? Am I muted or the video? Oh, the video's muted. Okay. Okay, that makes me feel much better. All right. Well, let's just go ahead and move on. They're basically saying that crowds of people are fleeing, etc. I don't know why you guys can't hear it. Well, I guess I got to better make sure to share screen audio. Wait, Chemical Mind, are you back? I was gonna have a guest on stream, which is why I was asking, but I really hope Israel will end up like Nazi Germany and the Palestinians get their land back in my lifetime. All right. I'll bring you back in. Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're not getting any sound. That's my
I
bad.
was just trying to get in to tell fellow traveler that his video is muted, but now that I'm here, I can stay for a little bit. But
Oh, okay. Well, I'm about to figure out what's wrong, so let's go back to share screen. To
But,
share
like,
audio, share tab or screen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I was sharing the wrong tab. My bad, guys. Here we go. Now we're gonna have audio.
Searched beneath the rubble for survivors. As shelling devastated the Gaza Strip, Palestinians mourned 17 members of the Shamlach family killed when their home was destroyed.
Israeli forces hit the building without warning. They did not ask us to evacuate. They did not say anything. Suddenly, we heard the airstrike and we ran to the building. We found out that it collapsed entirely.
Israel's military said it's hit more than 1,000 targets in the besieged enclave. The attacks have eviscerated downtown mosques like this one and left over 120,000 displaced. Israel.
That number has risen to about 250,000, by the way. Everyone in the Gaza Strip is basically being expected to flee south. They're basically taking a region from the Palestinians larger, they're taking more than half of Gaza from Palestine. So, like, check this out.
That's 1 in 8 Palestinians being displaced.
Yeah, well, there's roughly 2 million. So basically, what I'm drawing here with my mouse, they're taking basically everything fucking here from Palestine, and they're expecting everyone to get crammed into a region, a little geographical region, roughly the size of Cincinnati. 2 million people crammed within a region smaller than my home city. How about that? Making it even more of a fucking concentration.
And unlike in the past, none of the other Arab countries are doing anything. They're just kind of letting it happen, it seems like.
Well, yeah,
Iran.
Back in the past, there was more of a movement. Like, they weren't all fucking controlled by reactionary governments. Like, back in like the 50s and 60s, you had like Nasser, you had Gaddafi, you actually had some fairly decent and progressive governments in the region, and like movements that have, of course, all been undermined and destroyed. The consequences of the dissolution of the USSR are directly felt because now there's no world superpower backing socialist governments. They don't have that buffer for protection. You know, Gaddafi got overthrown. The socialist Egyptians are no longer around. Do not like this. Like, this is deeply unpopular. Nobody wants this to happen, but like everyone just feels powerless because none of their respective states are doing anything about it. But to my knowledge, Egypt is getting pissed because Israel's bombings have been encroaching into their territory, like across the border of Egypt, as far as I know. But here's another fucked up thing. So Israeli defense minister orders complete siege on Gaza. We are fighting against human animals. This is how the Israeli defense minister Yoav Gallant announced. Here we go. There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything will be closed. We are fighting against human animals and we are acting accordingly. This is just Nazi rhetoric. Like, I don't even know what to fucking say. I've got more footage I'd like to share. But yeah, no, this is what the Palestinians are up against. Like, it's crazy. Oh, we were victims of the Holocaust. Never forget the Shoah. There's a day in Israel where everybody literally drops what they're doing. They stop driving on the highway. They stop doing whatever. And there's a siren that goes off in commemoration of the Holocaust. And they all turn their fucking hearts and they like pledge allegiance or whatever. Bitches, this is exactly what you're fucking doing. Like, what the fuck? Like, the cognitive dissonance surrounding this whole thing just aggravates me to no fucking end.
كل العالم بيشوف وهي أهدافهم أطفال صغيرة أهدافهم أطفال صغيرة الآن نحمد الله ونشكر الحمد لله
Our capacity in the hospitals is only some 2,000 beds. For that reason, 2,000 beds with more than 2,000 injured, it means that we are about to collapse. The other thing is that with shortage of medication, we are consuming today in one day what in the ordinary days we consume in 1 month. The problem of electricity now was coincident with this crisis. So we have no electricity now in hospitals, and we are relying on standby generators, consuming a lot of fuels.
Yeah, and add icing to the cake. Israel's also dropping white phosphorus bombs on the Palestinians. Let's add some additional war crimes to the mix. This is another thing that came to my attention.
The UN, it says it's calling for.
The UN says it's calling for what?
It's calling for humanitarian corridors. What do you think is going to happen when the people leave through those humanitarian corridors? Israelis are just going to move in and take even more territory than they've already taken. So
I mean,
the UN is just supporting ethnic cleansing. If the UN was just, the UN would go in to fucking stop the Israelis from doing what they're doing.
If America was just, we wouldn't even need to invade. Like, America could bring an end to Israel within 15 minutes. All it would have to do is impose the same sanctions that it imposes on North Korea. You know what I mean? Take away their internet. Take away their take away their first world luxuries for like 15 minutes. And then when they come begging, screaming like a day later, be like, we'll negotiate with you next week.
Yeah.
And then come a week later, be like, okay.
Yeah. Biden has shown his colors too, big time. Like, I mean, he has been full on pro-Israel, like,
of course,
like completely. And it's disgusting.
Inside every liberal is a retroactive fascist, my friend.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna have in order to clear my why not? I think that's what's gonna end up happening. You're just gonna have a bunch of Palestinians moving to the first world. You're gonna have them moving to like Europe and America. I feel like that's what's gonna end up happening. Is like a lot of these refugees are just gonna move to Western Europe. I mean, I've met Ukrainians that have fled. Like at my MMA gym, I've met Ukrainians that fled Ukraine during the war, amidst the war with Russia. I have met Syrians, or I've talked to Syrians who have fled Syria amidst that crisis. I've talked to Libyans before who are over here because of that. I know a Yemeni store clerk, and I've also met some college attendees back when I was at the University of Cincinnati. Some Yemenese kids that were over here on foreign exchange that left Yemen. The store clerk from Libya who left Libya because it fell apart. I was growing up friends with some kids from the former Yugoslav Republic. Like in high school, I remember it. Like there were these Croatian kids, these Yugoslav kids, and their families moved over to the United States after Yugoslavia collapsed. They moved to Florida while I was living in Florida. There was a homeless Chinese lady that was staying with me for a little while. They're coming from everywhere, dude. Like these refugees, these immigrants, the people whose lives are being destroyed as a direct result of our policies. They're coming from everywhere, and it's not going to stop. There's their silent admission. They didn't respond to the allegations. They're like, yeah, we're using white phosphorus, and God, I fucking hate the state. I fucking hate Israel so much, dude.
Yeah.
Like
people are like freaking out about the Hamas. First of all, a ton of it has just been lies, like the mass rape. Remember that the mass rape thing was set against Gaddafi too, that he was handing out Viagra to his troops to mass rape people. Completely made up.
Yeah. Turns out
Human-
not a single human rights org was able to independently verify that claim.
Yeah. And
Not a
the lady
single one.
who claimed it had no evidence, even though,
Fucking Dodge Sharab, who was Gaddafi's fixer and like main like political assistant for decades, said that she has never seen Gaddafi force himself onto a woman. She has never seen him lay a finger on a woman. in that way.
and like, I don't doubt that Israeli civilians were killed by Hamas. But first of all, Israeli citizens, a ton of them directly participate in taking land from Palestinians, especially people right on the border, right next to Gaza. Those people are like totally involved in taking land. You see all the time videos of Israelis in civilian clothing with guns, shooting
Yeah.
Palestinians.
They
There was just
they-
a clip that just came out of an Israeli guy in a gun in civilian clothing shooting a Palestinian. So these people, these so-called civilians, a lot of them are not at all civilians. They're literally soldiers for Israel.
Yeah, they're volunteer soldiers. Like they
Yeah.
move from different parts of the world to come to Israel to carry out genocidal settler colonialism. They're militants and fucking they were hosting a rave. Like apparently days before the attack, they were hosting a fucking rave right next to the border wall with
And they
Gaza.
said it was a peace music festival or like a pro-free Palestine. Total lie. It was just a bunch of fucking Zionist people. Like the people they said that were at the festival that were like pro-Palestine, they're Zionists. They just don't care that there's a concentration camp right next to them. Also, apparently, the music festival was like less than a mile or something from a military base. So presumably, Hamas didn't fucking just like purposely target the music festival. It was probably in the way of the military base, and probably Israeli soldiers came in between. So yeah, it's just so much dishonesty. And again, these people who are partying next to a concentration camp are not good fucking people, and I do not have much sympathy for people who party next to a concentration camp.
No, I don't either. That's why I'm saying people want to compare what Hamas has done to what Israel is currently doing. Okay, so Hamas strikes back against literal settler colonial occupiers that are encroaching themselves onto their land. They are invaders. They're fighting back against invaders, and they're the bad guy. I'll tell you what, dude. People literally just expect the Palestinians to lie down in the mud and die. Like that's what they
Yeah.
want them to. Like
I saw the kibbutzes too. The kibbutzes that got attacked. Those people are
hello.
Hello? Sorry. I
You,
was saying, those people in the kibbutzes are living so nice. Oh my God. Like, they have these, like, luxury communes right next to a concentration camp. And imagine being someone living in Gaza your whole life, getting bombed and just blown to shit. And then a few miles away or a couple kilometers away, you see how Israelis are living in comparison. It's like, ugh.
yeah, the Palestinians are living in squalor while the Israelis are living like a first world country. And it's that way by design. They're trying to make life as absolutely fucking miserable for what's left of Palestine so that they want to leave, so that they go away, because they have a genocide that they've been trying to finish for decades. That's exactly what that is. And it just saddens me because there are 6 million Palestinian refugees surrounding Israel, and now we've got 2 million Palestinians. I think this is just going to result in a refugee crisis. I think like they're going to take half of Gaza. Gaza's about to get cut in half, and then the settlers are just going to take what's been driven out. Like, it's ridiculous. The Palestinians are fighting for their lives, man. Like at this point, they may as well all take up arms because they're fighting for their lives. It's like, so either fucking fight or leave. That's basically it. They have no other choice. What is the U.S., Iran, and Saudi Arabia saying? Of course, we know what Israel says. The brutality of Hamas bloodthirstiness brings to mind the worst rampages of ISIS. That's what Biden had to say. First U.S. weapons shipment arrived in Israel. The U.S. moved its Ford carrier to strike group, which both the USS Gerald R. Ford air carrier. So we're moving aircraft carriers over there. What happens in today's line is the continuation of the victories of the anti-Zionist resistance movement in various areas, including Syria, Lebanon, and occupied territories. That's what Iran has to say. So it's just disheartening, man. What other article got here?
It is. I gotta go, but
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just about to get into my history lesson.
All right. See ya.
Take it easy. All right, so Chemical Mind is out, and so where do I want to go with this? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into my little history lesson that I had planned. And in order for that to be done, I need an image out. Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about where Israel came from, how Israel came to be. Because I plan on using this footage for later, but share screen. Window. Here we go. You guys see this bloke? You guys see this dude? This dude right here? His name's Theodor Herzl. This man is considered by many to be the founder of Zionism as we know it. So, as I've already gone over, Zionism is, for all intents and purposes, a fascist ethno-nationalist ideology. It is an ideology of conquest akin to America's Manifest Destiny, or Nazi Germany's Lebensraum, whom Theodor Herzl is considered by many to be the founder of. Zionists believe that Jewish people are entitled to a homeland, or more specifically, Palestine. They believe that they are entitled to their promised land, which the only evidence that they have to support that it was their land and that they're entitled to this land are fairy tales out of the Bible and a bloodline lineage with Jews that lived there thousands of years ago that they cannot substantiate. They have no way of possibly substantiating. Meanwhile, Palestine was an internationally recognized sovereign nation that had already existed there long before the settlers ever came. It was a territory of the Ottoman Empire, which after the end of World War II and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire became British territory as the British and the French came in to drawl and quarter the Middle East, carving up new territory for themselves. And but needless to say, Herzl traveled across America and Europe in search of people lobbying for his support for his settler colonial project. And he ended up earning the sympathies and backings of many among the Western bourgeoisie. One could consider it a mutually beneficial relationship of sorts, as Herzl would get his fascist ethno-state, and he would get it with the backing and blessing of wealthy tycoons. The wealthy tycoons would have their fascist stronghold placed in the Middle East, a permanent place of residence and military base of operations, by which they have an entire army of brainwashed reactionaries on the front lines to carry out their operations. Anti-Semites would also benefit because they would have an outlet for their anti-Semitism. You don't like me being an anti-Semite towards you, go move to Israel. And many considered it to be acquiescing to the demands of the anti-Semites because, you know, now you got to leave, go flee, go live somewhere else. And it's kind of funny because anti-Semitic Christians, wealthy anti-Semitic Christians, were the ones that were behind Zionism in the first place. Literal Nazis are commonly supporters of Zionism and the state of Israel, as it turns out. So for all this talk about how Zionism, they conflate Zionism and Judaism with being the same thing. As I've said before, Zionism and Judaism are not the same thing. And Zionism, if anything, is anti-Semitic. You don't fucking evict 6 million Semites and be pro-Semitic. That's not how this works. And yet that is undoubtedly what Israel has done. So this, what you're looking at right here, was the original plan for Israel. It wasn't enough for them to just take Palestine. They also wanted to Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Syria, and cut into part of Turkey as well. Check this out. This is what they wanted. This is what the original plan was. And to my knowledge, they partially succeeded because they actually did take a bunch of territory from Egypt for a while. And this did escalate into a series of wars later on. But Zionism, again, is an ideology of conquest. They wanted to conquer all this territory, which they perceive as Greater Israel. But once again, up to that point, I go to the next image, Palestine was already an internationally recognized sovereign nation prior to that point. And as with the end of World War I, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, I've already gone through that. Let's move on. So this was the original UN resolution. The original UN resolution after World War II was for Israel to get, I believe, all of the spaces in green, and Palestine, all the spaces in orange. This was the original plan, a two-state solution. Decades leading up to that point, Israeli settlers were already pouring into the green territories in question. By the late 1930s, up to 10% of the population were settlers. And of course, they were carrying out attacks on peaceful communities. They were attacking Palestinians forcibly and violently, driving up them off their lands. Wealthy Jewish settlers with, again, additional backing from Western colonial donors purchased land from Arabic lords and engaged in a series of enclosures onto the commons. And through these enclosures, a great deal of Palestinian peasants, Arabic peasants, were driven off their lands. So that had already been going on for decades prior to this. But yeah, this was the original resolution. This was the original plan for the two-state solution. However, things didn't quite pan out that way. So by 1947, this is what we got. But what ended up happening over the iterative decades was conquest. Ultimately, Palestine would be carved up and conquered, as the Israelis, with once again the backing and blessing of the UN and Western-enabled genocide, would proceed to drop their fascist ethno-state on what was left of the Palestinians' territory, even within this two-state solution, carving it out into three separate parts and dwindling it down over the decades. In 1948, Israeli troops would carry out a series of terror attacks on Arabic communities, killing hundreds in the process, carrying out widespread torture and mass rapings of Arabic women. In each of these attacks, hundreds of innocent people died, and countless survivors were once again driven from their homes. And these attacks would become part of what is now known as the Nakba, or the catastrophe in Arabic. And it was due to these attacks, as well as the declaration of the independence of Israel, that the First Israeli-Arabic War would commence. And it was basically Israel, during this war, it was Israel versus Palestine, plus additional help from the Egyptians, the Jordanese, and who else? I believe the Syrians. There were multiple countries that hopped in that came to the aid of Palestine, and it was a war that spanned approximately a year, which unfortunately the Israelis won. And in the aftermath of this war, roughly 700,000 Palestinian Arabs were displaced from their homes. And ultimately, the territory that we now know as Gaza would become the last bastion of Palestine. I have another article that I would like to share with you guys covering additional events in concerns to the developments that had transpired over the following decades, because there was additional wars that took place. There was a 7 or 6 day war that took place, I believe, in 49. There was a second Arabic war, which occurred shortly after that. But here, I'm going to go up and pull that article. Here we go. Don't worry, guys. I'll get to questioneering after I'm done with this, I promise. So, 1956, Second Arab-Israeli War, or the Suez Crisis, takes place in Egypt, or takes place after Egypt nationalizes the Suez Canal. In response to Israel, the United Kingdom and France form an alliance, and Israel occupies the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula. The Israeli army eventually withdraws its troops under pressure from the US and USSR. Yasser Arafat sets up the Palestinian organization Fatah in Gaza and Kuwait. It later becomes the main component of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO. So the PLO was, to my knowledge, originally a socialist organization, which did have additional support from the USSR. And but at the same time, Hamas was in its infancy. Believe it or not, Israel actually funded Hamas. They actually funded Hamas, and they enabled the rise of Hamas and set it up as a competing organization because they wanted the spirit of the Palestinian liberation movement to get co-opted by reactionaries and people that, on the surface were bloodthirsty zealots, because it would help them to justify their atrocities against the Palestinians, and it would also it would also ruin and delegitimize the movement for Palestinian liberation. And it is actually thanks to the Israelis. So, people are going to blame Hamas for everything. Even if you could blame Hamas for everything, Hamas was fucking backed and enabled and allowed to rise to prominence thanks to the Israelis in the first place. So moving on. Additional events. 1982, Israeli troops storm into neighboring Lebanon in a controversial military, not right now, originally military mission called Operation Peace in Galilee. The aim of the operation is to wipe out Palestinian guerrilla bases in southern Lebanon, but Israeli troops push all the way to the Lebanese capital of Beirut. The subsequent routing of the PLO under Arafat leaves the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon essentially defenseless. From September 16th to the 18th, Lebanese Christian phalangelist militiamen with ties to Israel enter the camps of Sabra and Shatila in Beirut, unleashing a brutal massacre that shocks the international community. The massacres, the subject of an Israeli inquiry popularly calls the Kahane Commission, would subsequently cost Sharon his job as defense minister. 1987, uprisings in Palestinian refugee camps in Gaza spread to the West Bank, marking the start of the first Palestinian Intifada, uprising in Arabic. Names the War of Stones. It lasted until 93, costing more than 1,000 Palestinian lives. So it's just it's just back and forth conflicts. Israel fucks with Palestine. Palestine fights back. Everyone victim blames, and Israel uses that as further justification to massacre massive amounts of people. And if you look between 1990 and 2020, the civilian casualties and the lives lost have been disproportionately in the direction of Palestine. Like, the Israelis have killed way more Palestinians than the Palestinians have killed Israelis. Like, seriously, here we have, here we go, the wall getting built. But long story short, one of the events that was a provocation for this attack, which occurred on the 6th or 7th of October, was the death of a 14-year-old. This is something the media is not talking about. One moment. This is the article. This is what I'm looking for. The death of a 14-year-old Palestinian. Israeli sniper kills 14-year-old Palestinian boy in Jenin. No one's talking about this. Israeli forces shot and killed a 14-year-old boy in the northern occupied West Bank yesterday. Israeli forces routinely resort to intentional lethal force in situations not justified under international law and make no effort to impartially investigate or ensure that Israeli soldiers act in accordance with international standards, said Aib Aoub. I can't pronounce your name, sorry. But yeah, so they shot and killed a 14-year-old, and this is not an unusual thing. There was this activist. Here, let me show you guys something. So this was a huge story the other year, I believe a year ago. No, this was a few years ago, actually. I remember this. There was this activist. What's her name? Don't worry, dog. Ruzan al-Najjar. This lady, little backstory. She was she was a doctor. She was just a nurse. She was a nurse, very young nurse, 20-year-old nurse that was part of a protest on the Gaza Strip, and she was treating some injured protesters, and she got shot and killed by a sniper. Media's not talking about this. They're not talking about how peaceful Palestinian protesters are routinely shot and gunned down by Israeli snipers. They don't talk about how IDF or BDS, boycotts, divestment, sanctions, is constantly being delegitimized by the Israeli state and is constantly being called anti-Semitic by Zionists. So they can't protest peacefully without being burned as anti-Semites. They can't protest peacefully without getting shot. They can't, violently defend themselves without being called extremists. So, like, again, the fascists just expect the Palestinians to lie down and fucking die. That's what that is. So, let's go ahead and round things off, because I'm about done here. I'm going to read some comments, but yeah, that's the truth. So, all these liberals that are victim blaming Hamas right now, like literally all of them, they like to think it's crazy that they can recognize that fascism is bad and that the Nazis were bad, but they're behaving like fucking Nazis right now. Like that, like fucking seriously. They're behaving just like the Nazis that they recognize as bad. Like their fucking stance on principle immediately comes to an end whenever it comes to present atrocities and crimes against humanity. It's always for the current war, always for the current situation, always for what's going on now, but they recognize what happened last time as bad. But this time it'll be different. That's the narrative. That's what constantly goes on. Fucking ridiculous. So the thing is that the promised land is just a metaphor for being in a spiritual place. It had nothing to do with an actual piece of real estate. And the other thing is, like, if the Israelis really wanted to go live in their promised land, they could have shared it with the Palestinians. I'm sure the Palestinians would have been more than happy to work something out, and they could have come to peaceful negotiations and no one had to die. But the problem is Zionism is white supremacist. It's genocidal ideology. They can never allow that. Even when the foundations of the two-state after World War II was done, the Israelis still had a problem with that because it was still majority Arab. They had to do something about that. So they forcibly, over the decades, drove out millions of Palestinians. And now Palestinians are minorities in their own fucking country. So there was another commenter right here. There used to be socialists in Gaza and the Palestinian. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. They've been killed off by the CIA and Mossad's efforts so that the more radical elements stir shit up more. Yeah, the CIA and the Israelis intentionally supported the reactionaries. They intentionally killed off the socialists and had the heart of the National Liberation Movement co-opted by right-wing zealots. So unfortunately, that's the current state of things. But yeah, the only solution to this is a right of return for Palestinians. We need right of return for Palestinians. The Palestinians should have the right to return to their lands and go back to their homes. And the settler colonial occupiers can fuck off, basically. Or even then, they don't even need to be forced to fuck off at gunpoint. Literally just allow the Palestinians back. And when the Palestinians come back, and when the Israelis are forced to treat them with equality, they're going to leave of their own volition, and they're all going to go back to Europe because they're a bunch of right-wing pieces of shit. Will I join the DEEP program? Maybe. I would have to figure out how to get on the DEEP program. I would love to talk to Hakeem in second thought, but as it stands right now, they have nothing to gain by associating with me because I've only got that 5,000 subscriber clout. They kill people all the time. They kill people constantly. They've been doing it for literal decades. They're constantly shooting and killing innocent people. Are you fucking kidding me? The IDF are stormtroopers, unironically. I know nothing of this doctor's plot. I didn't find anything pertaining to that, but even after this time, it still amazes me people think they own part of the planet. We do not own this planet. We are lucky enough to even yeah. I mean, considering the fact that it took a fucking big bang, 14 billion years of entropy, and astronomical odds, and the metaphorical luck of the draw for us to be here, I mean, is nothing short of a miracle. And it's a shame that people don't realize it. All I can do is hope that the good in people prevail and that working people rise to the occasion to bring an end to this. But right now, the situation couldn't be any more dire. More fascism. They even calculate the calories Gaza needs to control their population. Yeah, that's fucked. Support for NATO is no different than support for the Nazis at this point. I mean, pretty much. So, like, I am gonna make a video about this. I want to make a video about this because I've dug up enough articles and I've done enough research to where I feel like I could make a bit of an educated video. It's another one of my famous documentaries. I would keep it relatively short, probably about 25, 30 minutes. My only concern is that it doesn't get anywhere because in a giant platform, in a sea of videos being made about Israel and Palestine, would mine really catch up in the algorithm? I don't know. The algorithm seems to hate my guts so far, but if I can get in touch with Second Thought, Hakeem, I mean, I guess it's worth a shot. Try and see if there's something there. Is there anything else you guys would like to say before I go? Because I'm only going to read like one or two more comments. All I tell people about this affair regarding Israel is that you can take the Europeans out of Europe, but not Europe out of the Europeans. Colonists colonize, massacred at home one time or not. Yeah, and I can't wait to see the look on their faces when entire countries are leaving and coming to their lands to settle and live down. Chickens are coming home to roost, dude. Like, you think the genocidal rhetoric is going to stop here? It's never going to stop. Like, when climate change forcibly uproots hundreds of millions of people, and we have entire continental swaths of the globe that have been ruined and destabilized for decades, fleeing to the global north, you're going to see all of the Western colonial powers basically go full fascist on the spot pretty fucking quick. Yeah, it's crazy how everyone forgot about Ukraine, like, at the drop of a hat. And it's also crazy how a lot of these liberals stand in solidarity with the Ukrainians and think Russia's doing genocide, but, like, they're just ignoring the situation of Palestine. Like, oh, Palestine, it's fucking crickets. It's just, oh, well, that's what they get for standing up for themselves. It's fucking ridiculous, man. The whole situation frustrates me because I just feel powerless to do anything about it. Like, I'm just one person. Like, there's not really a lot that I can do personally. Like, I mean, I guess I can show up to a protest, volunteer, and that's what I'd like to do, spread awareness about this, and, like, try to orchestrate a truth movement about this whole thing. Because, like, we could definitely put pressure on the U.S. government. If we could put sufficient pressure on the U.S. government to stop, then we could probably get it to stop. But it would require, like, a whole movement, man. But it's just sad. The how many people are addicted to the imperialist spoils. Ooh, I like this. Someone made an edit of the Israeli flag. I'm gonna show you guys this edit real quick before we go. Full screen this bitch. There we go. Check it out. I would say that's accurate. Well, guys, I think I'm going to go ahead and close things off. Y'all aren't really commenting. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a red salute and wish you all a very nice day. I hope you all have a wonderful day. You'll be seeing me upload soon enough. My weekend is just around the corner. So peace out.